Good morning, everyone. I'm Veronica Horn, President of the Saginaw County Chamber of Commerce. It's just so good to be able to get together this morning for Out of the Frying Pan, the State of Manufacturing, which is the third event of the Chamber's Public Policy Bite series. Before we get started, I want to cover a few logistical things about how today's event will work so that everyone can have the best viewing experience. We're going to mute everyone except for the person who is supposed to be speaking. That way we'll avoid the echoes you sometimes hear in the background. We are going to have a question and answer period given whatever time we have at the end. So insert your comments on the side in the chat. We'll pull those out and we'll direct those to our speaker at the end. Now, to begin our program, I'd like to invite all of you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And on this day, 9/11, 19 years ago, nearly 3,000 lives were lost that day, and countless others have died since the 9/11 attack on the United States. I'd like to take a moment of silence to remember those that were lost, our first responders, and just for our country. Thank you. Never forget. One of the priorities of the Chamber is to actively educate and advocate issues that can impact the business in our community. In order to make that happen, it's important for us to follow and share information on a wide variety of industry sectors. And that's why we're here today. The more we learn about how each business and industry sector impacts the fabric of our community, the better we can be at stitching everything together, form strategic partnerships and collaborations that benefit us all. I'd like to extend my thanks and appreciation to any and all elected and public servants who were able to join us today, along with a shout out to the members of the Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center at Saginaw Valley State University. I especially want to thank our sponsors for this event. They include our Premier Series sponsors, AT&T, Dow, and Saginaw Valley State University. Our speaker sponsor, Hemlock Semiconductor Operations, LLC, and our gold sponsors, Consumers Energy, Great Lakes Bay Michigan Works, Health Alliance Plan, NextYear, and Saginaw Future, Inc. We appreciate your support as we work to provide informative and useful programming designed to help our members plan for the future. And now I'd like to welcome a dear friend and today's speaker sponsor, Brooke Beebe from Hemlock Semiconductor Operations, LLC, to introduce today's presenters.
Great. Thank you, Veronica, so much. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brooke Beebe, and I'm the Vice President of External Affairs for Hemlock Semiconductor in Saginaw County. I want to thank everybody for joining us today to talk about the current state of manufacturing in our community, our region, and our state, and to learn about what we might be able to expect in the future. At HSC, we make polysilicon, which is the fundamental raw material for the semiconductor and the solar industry. And we're very focused on our being a good steward in our community, but also on what we can be doing to continue to advance manufacturing in the United States. There's a lot of focus in our sectors on semiconductor growth as well as solar growth, and we believe that the United States is an excellent place to invest in manufacturing. We're really excited to hear from John Walsh today. John was named the president and CEO of the Michigan Manufacturers Association in January of this year. And John, what a time to take the lead of an organization like MMA just before so many changes have taken place. We were really excited at HSC for John to take on this role. at leading MMA. John has extensive experience in state government. He worked in the executive and the legislative branches of state government as the state budget director and director of strategic policy in the Snyder administration, as well as a 3-term member of the House of Representatives, including as a member of House leadership. We've worked with John for years, and just think he's an excellent choice to lead MMA, especially during this time of flux. Just previous to joining MMA, he was the president of the Downtown Detroit Partnership, and again joined MMA in January of this year. The MMA serves as the Lansing lobbying arm for governmental, regulatory, and tax issues that affect all manufacturers in Michigan. John, we're really excited to hear from you today, so please join me in welcoming John Walsh to the program.
Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate that invitation very much, and sincerely, I've always enjoyed working with you and others at your company. It's been a great relationship. I was excited to renew it in this new capacity. I'm going to say a couple more thanks, and I'll touch a little bit about how it was to start at the MMA in January. I want to thank Veronica for inviting me to participate today. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you for joining us. And to the Saginaw County Chamber in general, this is a great idea to get the word out to our manufacturers across the state, our business folks, an opportunity to hear a little bit of policy, have some discussion, move forward. My intention today is give you some of my my knowledge and experiences, but I also hope to learn from your questions and answer them, at the same time, a bit of a discussion. Moving forward, I'm going to apologize. There is something in the air today. Thankfully, I'm not ill with COVID, but I do have allergies. So I may clear my throat from time to time, and I apologize for that. There's just something in the air today. So when I arrived in January, one of my hopes was, in addition to getting to know my team and my board, another was to get out and meet our members, but also to go out and meet with our chambers and regional manufacturing groups, because I think a united front is so much more helpful to our manufacturing voice in the state. And we have some great groups around the state. I've had a chance to meet with some of the leaders. Veronica and I have known each other for years. I served in the House with Ken. So we've had a good relationship, but I'm just building relationships with many of our area and regional chambers and leadership. And I want to do more of that. I had always hoped and envisioned my job to be out of the office about 2 to 2.5 days a week, and in the office the other 2 to 2.5 days, to spread the word on manufacturing, to learn what's going on in the entire state. So as soon as I am able, as soon as companies can have a visitor, as soon as events like this can be held live, I truly look forward to meeting many of you and be out and about, something that I miss. I was on the job about 6 weeks when the pandemic caused the stay safe, stay home order. And we've all had to adjust, obviously. Zoom meetings, Teams meetings, trying to work from home. I happen to be in the office today. We come in a couple days a week, just a few of us, to adjust some things that can only be done here. But it's just odd. We're all trying to get our footing. We're trying to figure out, as human beings, family members, community members, and also business owners or employees, how to deal with this ongoing crisis as it changes from time to time. And so what I want to do is I think it's worth taking a look back at where we were in February, what we went through as an industry and as an association in the March, April, May timeframe, and where we're at today and where we hope to go. And then we'll follow up with questions at the end. So in February, in Michigan, we had just over 628,000 Michiganders at work in manufacturing, and life was good. It was there were some clouds on the horizon. In 2019, economists took a look at the manufacturing industry, and for Michigan, they expected a 2.3% growth in productivity in 2020. down from 2.9% in 2019. That's not too bad. That's not even close to a recessionary level. There was some concern looking out forward that 2021, maybe the second or third quarter, could be difficult. But in this year, as we started, January and February, we certainly felt confident that we were going to be okay here in the state of Michigan and for manufacturing nationally. Just those little concerns on the out on the horizon. And then the COVID crisis happened. March arrived. It caught the entire world by surprise. It is such a dramatic change in ordinary expectations of any kind of a virus. It's clear that no matter what the preparations are, as good as they might be, you can never fully prepare. You can't be 100% prepared at a national level, let alone at a company or even go to a small company level for what the impacts might be. They are unpredictable. The stay safe, stay home order came up in late March, and that impacted, excuse me, more than half of our membership. And that half represented over 100,000 employees in the state alone. The entire industry, we think, in Michigan was just a little less than half impacted. It was both the stay safe, stay home order, but it also was the automotive OEM's decision to halt production for a number of weeks that had that dramatic impact. The MMA, like so many other associations, including your chamber, turned to member support. We were answering questions with our members to try and define what does it mean to be essential versus non-essential. And I want to talk about that a little bit because it was a unique designation in the United States. Many of our states, our allies and our competitors in manufacturing, had a bit broader of a definition. For manufacturing, a number of states adopted homeland security definitions that permitted most of their manufacturing, if not all, to move forward. Also had their own definition that was quite comprehensive. We and just a few others had the essential versus non-essential. And for good and bad reason and result, the state of Michigan decided not to firmly define that. And what I mean by good and bad is that allowed some room for some of our members, some of our manufacturers in general in the state, member or no, to make a unilateral decision that they should stay open because they were essential. The problem with the definition, and this is an observation, it's not judgmental, it's just what was the impact on our businesses, is that a number of people were so uncertain, they might have, and so frightened of the disease and the unknown implications to their employees and to their own families, they may have shut down unnecessarily or restricted activities. Others continued, and I was being contacted by a number of very reasonable leaders in our state of small and large companies with a sincere pause in their voice. They wanted to comply with the order, but they also wanted to be productive. They wanted to keep their employees on the job, and they wanted to fill their contracts, which were around the world. And as you all know, in the manufacturing industry, there's not a whole lot of patience in the supply chain. The expectation is the widget that you're producing is going to arrive on time, and we're really sorry about the fact that you may not be able to. We may have to find another competitor. I saw numerous letters from other states and from manufacturers in other countries making those kinds of demands. So it was a very difficult time that we all had to go through. Thankfully, we continued to work with the administration and convince the administration that the true and more reliable guide was, can you operate safely? And because we had manufacturers operating not just here in Michigan, but they had operations overseas, we had plenty of evidence that manufacturing could operate and was in fact operating safely and moving forward. So the efforts resulted in manufacturing opening earlier, but as you know, the impact was just devastating. There's one company in Livonia, my hometown. They have just over 200 employees. They were used to an income of $5 million a month based on their orders, and in a single month, they dropped down to $200,000. That story can be told at various levels, from 10 employees to thousands of employees across the state, and it was a devastating impact, even though we got back to work early on. The good news is we have proven that manufacturing can operate safely, and I'll touch a little bit on that in a moment, how we have been guiding not just our industry, but other industries as well. We spent a great deal of time helping our members work through the payroll protection plan. It was a rapidly developed federal policy. Many of you may have taken advantage of it. We still are in a phase of uncertainty as the federal government tries to determine what will be forgiven and what won't. My sense is that much of the amounts in money granted will be turned in or kept as a grant and not really be a loan. That's what my prediction is. I think as long as people are being true to the intent, they shouldn't be concerned. But until we have a firm word from the federal government, there's still a little bit of uncertainty there, and we'll continue to work with the manufacturing industry. We worked with our members, and we opened up our website and our information to non-members as well. Just to pause there for a moment, if you would like to take a look at our COVID response toolkit, it's at mimfg.org. We think the issues are far too important to have restricted it just to our membership. Please take advantage of the data that we have there if you wish. Part of that includes answers with regard to other federal and state relief programs that have been passed or pending. We continue to update that. Those would be programs like some of the tax payment deferment programs, a variety of UIA rules regarding the impact on your rating for the period of the emergency, et cetera. And then we spent a great deal of time on personal protection equipment in two ways. The first is for those that wanted to jump in and meet a worldwide demand for more personal protection equipment, trying to deal with the original equipment manufacturer, somebody that held the intellectual property rights, how to convert quickly, how to get it into the system. It was cumbersome. Frankly, the state was trying to stand up its State Emergency Operation Center. The MEDC had a lot to learn. We had a lot to learn. The supply chain had a lot to learn. I'm happy to say as time progressed, things smoothened. Our government and our industries reacted as best as possible, and over time, with a lot of heads working together, we were able to be successful in getting product into the marketplace. The second place was to define how and where to use it. And that's a debate that continues to this day. As many of you know, the manufacturing industry operates under OSHA and MIOSHA and CDC standards, and some follow WHO standards. In addition to that, the executive order has some particular requirements for the manufacturing industry. We're one of very few industries that has to do a daily screening process. We are required to do a daily screening process with a temperature and some kind of a verbal or written check with employees as they come in. And that was very difficult at the beginning. It's smoothened, but there are some concerns as we go into the fall, particularly with how do you line up employees, whether you're small or large, depending on the number of entrances. You could have anywhere from 10 people lined up or 100 people waiting to get into a building in cold or inclement weather. And we've also found that the weather, of course, implicates or impacts the ability to get a fair and proper thermometer reading. So those are issues that still plague us, is, how can we do that and do it safely for the benefit of our employees and for the workplace. The other issue was the lengthy debate on masks, and I'm not talking about the political debate. I'm talking about just the plain science of it. I personally read 6 different reports that were published by reputable universities and sources, and they were all in conflict over the requirements for a mask and their efficacy. Thankfully, the MMA and other groups were able to work with the governor and get to a point where masks were to be worn more in line with the CDC requirements, which is if you can't maintain a distance of 3 to 6 feet for 15 minutes or more, you should wear a mask. Most of our employers have simply said, if you're going to be in a public space, wear a mask if you're at your workstation and you're alone. And many of you know you could have a workstation that is 20 or 30 feet away from another human being. A mask is not necessary. But that debate continues. Should it be strengthened? Should it be loosened? So those things will continue to go on. If you do visit our resource center, you will see a number of resources related to CDC, MIOSHA, OSHA, and executive order requirements. You'll see some playbooks that were provided by many of our members. And what that means is some lengthy documents on how to comply with the various requirements and to do so in a manner that's productive for your employees. The good news about manufacturing is we're in the business of producing goods, and sometimes that requires some level of danger that is not witnessed in an office or a restaurant. And as a result, over time, we've become good at risk mitigation. And these playbooks that you'll see really help with that. I took them and reduced them to a 2-page summary, but the summary just gives you the basic rules. The playbooks that were provided by some of the companies actually provide you with documentation that might be useful. I suspect many of you have already gone ahead with your own policies and procedures, but it's worth a look to take a look at that. And then what I want to do is just take a look at where we are now. Manufacturing is largely back in operation. Most have survived, but there have been some business failures. It's difficult for any business to survive closure of the sort that some went through. Some employees have not been called back yet. If there was a company that was operating 2 shifts, they might only be at 1 because of worldwide demand. Others are at full, just cranking at full pace. They might be calling additional employees. And if you're in the supply chain for campers or a pontoon boat, a bike, things that you could use outdoors, those are all industries that are just booming and looking for people, trying to move along rapidly. There is a boat, a pontoon manufacturer, Avalon, that was used to making about 8 pontoons a day, and I think they're well over 20 now, just wall to wall in their operation, trying to get their boats out to meet demand this summer in those areas. But that said, the NAM had put out a chart, and the unfortunate part is the impact to employment from February to August remains negative, meaning less employees involved in a number of industries, all except for computer and electronic products. And they're at a 0.6% growth. Everyone else overall is down. Transportation equipment is at the worst. Fabricated metal products. I could go through the entire list, but every part of our industry has been impacted adversely, and that continues through numbers as of August 31st. And again, because of a softened worldwide demand, that's likely to continue. Nationally, manufacturing employment is expected to bounce back to roughly 12,350,000 workers by the end of the year. That's up from 12,132 in August, but it's down from 12,852,000 in February. At the state level, we're largely tracking that level of activity. As of July 31st, and I'm sorry I don't have August 31st numbers yet, Michigan reported that 559,000 manufacturing workers were back at work. Remember, the number in February was 628,000. Some of the other things that we're dealing with currently is to keep people not only safe at work, but to keep them safe at home. Many associations and many employers have joined in with the governor and with the Michigan Economic Recovery Council to help promote a social media campaign that will drive folks to understand that dangers are still amongst us, and that while we'll do everything in our power to keep you safe at work, there is a responsibility on you individually to be safe on your private time. It's not intrusive. It's not that you have to check in with employers or the government, but it's trying to get the word out and inform people that there is still danger and to be diligent. There is a very good series of ads that are out called Rona for Real. It's RONA, the number 4 real. If you Google that, it'll give you some information. And again, simply, it's designed to educate people that there are simple things that we can do. We can wash our hands. We can keep social distance. Wear a mask when you're in an enclosed space. Because we want, from a humanistic standpoint, of course, we want people to be healthy, first and foremost. From a business perspective, we need our employees to show up, unlike almost any other industry, except for perhaps food production and construction. Manufacturing employees need to be on the job to do the work. So we want them to be healthy at work and at home. And I want to just take a few minutes to, excuse me, give you some COVID numbers. These are fresh as of this week. Uh, uh, Several association presidents, the Michigan Chamber, the MMA, the SBAM, the Detroit Regional Chamber, and the Grand Rapids Chamber, we all participate in a group phone call with the Michigan Economic Recovery Council to look at data to help provide the governor with some suggestions on how we might proceed forward. So let me tell you that in Michigan, we're now up to 30,000 tests or more per day. That is a remarkable number in a very short period of time. And while we are seeing an increase in number, the things that I'd recommend that we take a look at are the positivity rate. It remains stable for weeks at 3.1, 3.2%. What that means is while we're testing more and more individuals, the positivity rate as a percentage of those tested is stable. It's not spiking. If you'll recall, maybe midsummer, Arizona, Florida, Texas, and there's one other state that escapes me, they were really struggling with absenteeism, with folks in the hospital. Their systems weren't overrun, but there was a lot of illness that required a lot of care. They were at the 6.5% and above rate of positivity. So our goal is trying to keep it at 3.1, 3.2, 3.5%, just so that we can keep people healthy and moving forward. I'm really pleased that we are stable at 3.1%. Hospitalization rates have plummeted dramatically. There's two reasons for that, according to the epidemiologists that provide the report. One is that we're testing more and more younger folks, and as a result, younger are more able to withstand the scourge that COVID presents. But the other bigger impact is the use of what's called palliative care. Now, I wish I could give you a firm definition on that. I'm a lawyer and a businessman, not a scientist, but I'll simply tell you what that means is we have found other methodologies as a result of our experience with COVID over the past 5 or 6 months that result in more people being sent home with any number of treatments to help with their comfort level. It doesn't cure it, but allows them to recover at home as opposed to a hospital. And as a result, we are not having anywhere near a run on our intensive care unit beds. The death rate has plummeted dramatically. These are all good things. And they can get lost in the raw reporting of the number. If you see it, yep, see people are sick. But if it's 700 a day, thankfully, 700 are highly unlikely to pass because of it. And slightly, just some small handful might end up in the hospital given today's standards. So that's good news. And to draw to show you the impact on a worldwide basis, I saw this number for France. I wish I had it for the US. I didn't have time to grab it, but I saw this morning. France is rapidly approaching its peak of cases back in April. They were at 128 per million. They're now back up to 109. They had dropped like much of the rest of the world. But still, they have fewer than 500 people in ICU beds across the entire country. That's as opposed to 5,000 that were in ICU beds in April. So there's been a dramatic change in how we're dealing with the disease, and our healthcare system seems to be in very good shape, and we're treating patients better, perhaps. It may not be the proper terminology, but there's a big impact. Why does that matter to manufacturing? It's all about absenteeism. If our workers are not safe and confident, if they don't think that they can come to work and be productive, or if they're sick or a family member is sick, they won't make it to work. They won't be focused on their work, and we want them to be confident. We want them to be safe and moving forward. So we watch these numbers carefully and try to message them, because in this world right now where the alarm is really around that raw number, no firm analysis of positivity rate or hospitalization or death, it's difficult if you don't remind folks of how far along that we've come, how much safer we are. To try and get somebody to come into work, you got to make sure that they're, again, safe, first and foremost, every day of the week. But they also have to be confident in their safety coming in. So that's why those numbers really, really matter. A couple more points on the numbers, then I'll carry on. What we're seeing in terms of spikes, it's not in the workplace. The workplace is one of the safest places you can be. On occasion, you'll hear about a spike. It might be at an office where One particular company insisted on continuing their training, would bring over 100 people into a very small conference room. They had over 150 people in a week test positive. It's usually one-offs. Restaurants are safe. So manufacturing is very safe. Construction is safe. The hotspots right now are still social gatherings. It's where you go and you drop your wariness. You're with your Aunt Martha. Who wouldn't want to hug Aunt Martha at a graduation party? I'm not trying to be facetious. It's just what happens when we're human beings. And if somebody shows up at that small gathering or large gathering, even if it's outdoors, you drop your defenses, and hugs and kisses and so on. I'm not telling you to stop. I'm just trying to identify where some of this comes from. The other area, of course, we've heard much about long-term healthcare facilities, nursing homes. And then more recently, we're starting to see some rising numbers at college. You'll start to hear that MSU has had over 120, I'm sure this will hit the news soon, 120 positive cases. That was the result of 2, if not 3 house parties off campus. We're working with the universities and the state government to determine how to report that, because a house party, of course, is not a MSU authorized function. They're being safe on campus, but it is college students, and the concern is they'll spread it elsewhere. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up, and we're going to start seeing some spiking at colleges. About 2 more weeks, we'll start to see numbers from K through 12s that are operating. It's a little too early. Worldwide experience for K through 12 is really rather low, to the right of a decimal point in terms of transmission, particularly for children below 9 years old. That's worldwide and nationally. The transmission rate is incredibly small from a child to a teacher and or to a parent. I'm going to go back to why is it important to manufacturing. It's absenteeism again. If your employee can't come to work because they're taking care of their child in a system that has decided to go all virtual or partially virtual, that impacts your ability to produce your products. And it also impacts the employee's confidence rate. Is my child safe? Am I safe? So just a few things to point out on those things. Moving forward, some of the things that we're working on, and I'm going to get to questions. I want to make sure we have time, but I want to touch on some of the things we're currently focused on. Childcare is one. Trying to work with the state to loosen some of the childcare requirements, perhaps allowing more students temporarily into existing facilities, trying to lower some of the licensure requirements temporarily, make them a bit more reasonable so that parents have alternatives to find, working with groups of employers so that they might find a way to sponsor collectively childcare for the interim, on-site or off. Most are off-site. As you all know, manufacturing doesn't have a lot of spare space for a childcare facility, especially on the fly. But those are kinds of things that we're working on. We're also taking a look at liability issues as they face all of our manufacturers, small and large. It falls in a couple of categories. First, for those that jumped into the PPE world, they did it quickly. It wasn't their main line of business, and what we're advocating for is legislation that will protect them if they did everything with the best of intentions, reasonable person standard. If there is some level of gross negligence, of course, they should be held responsible. No one would ever argue that point. But we're hoping to protect those that jumped in quickly from frivolous lawsuits. The other area is for employers on a day-to-day basis. If they are following all the various regulations from CDC, MIOSHA, OSHA, those that are specific under the executive order, if they're doing it in a reasonable fashion, meeting that reasonable person standard, doing their best, following best practices, we're trying to avoid, again, frivolous lawsuits that would cripple an industry that is already struggling from the pandemic. So we're working with the state legislature. As of this morning, the administration, the Whitmer administration, is still not supporting the current bills. That doesn't mean they won't. There's lots of work, and for those of you that are frequent visitors to the legislative process, you know that there's a lot of give and take, but at the present time, the give and take is only occurring in the legislature. The administration is not engaged at all on those discussions. That's neither usual nor unusual. It could be a tactic on their part, simply waiting to see what comes out of the legislature before they respond. But I'll tell you what other states are up to as of today. There is either legislation that has passed or executive orders in 30 states that address COVID-19 liabilities related to healthcare providers. There are 13 states that have covered business liability. So again, going back to that employee level. And then 12 states have addressed the issue of the production of PPE. There's no other way to put it, but on the fly, the ones that did it quickly to meet a big demand. The issues include visitor liability. That's not always such a big deal for manufacturing, but of course you have contractors on site. It's employee liability potential, customer liability, and again, liability for those who produce PPE. So that's all addressed in the various bills. One key element in the Michigan bills that are pending is substantial compliance. If you've met that standard, that should allow a judge to dismiss a suit and save all of us, not just the employer, but the employees and the society, time, valuable time, and keep focused on keeping people healthy, safe, and productive and employed moving forward. And again, I just would wrap that piece up. If you're a true wrongdoer, you should be held liable. We'll never argue against that. But if you've done your best, we're hoping to achieve some protection. The opportunities that we see ahead of us are in PPE production. But we have to be measured on that. That was really generating some excitement early on as people jumped in, kind of like an arsenal of democracy, trying to get there and provide it and make it available. But let me put it into perspective. I'm going to say kind of mid-May, the daily production was 200 million pieces of personal protection equipment, all in, every piece of it, a gown, a mask, a shield, you name it. 80% of that was produced overseas, and of that 80%, the vast majority was in China. The United States portion of that market was only 20%. The hope as we grow, it's now getting up close to 880 million, 900 million pieces a day. That will last for a period. How long, I don't know. I can't predict how long we're going to need to keep our current standards in place. But that is mostly, again, being filled overseas. The capacity is there to mushroom rather quickly. We're meeting some of it. I would love to capture more in Michigan, as you would, and we're going to try and help our members do that. But it will always be some friction between cost and, of course, then availability. So that's still to be negotiated. I think the bigger opportunity in general for Michigan is what is often referred to as regional supply chains and some degree of redundancy in our supply chains. What we've learned and are still learning to this day is that supply, we always knew this, I think, as professionals in the industry, that the supply chain is delicate, but we never had it tested the way that that COVID has. So there is some opportunity to bring some critical industries back home, more perhaps in the healthcare and pharmaceutical industries, the defense industry, but even in straight up brick and mortar, the automotive industry, making sure that there can't be a worldwide supply chain. And in turn, assuring the world that they don't have to worry about our supply chain moving forward. So I think there's some opportunities there that we can look at. I just made a presentation to the state joint House and Senate committee on our COVID response. And you have to understand this, and I'm saying this with a smile, but I meant it sincerely. I'm a former budget director. I realize money is short, and it's going to be even more short a year from now in our state budget, but we have to take a look at incentives to keep our manufacturers here, let alone invite some. There's some great opportunities, but we're going to need a little bit of whipped cream to make that attraction a bit better, because we are in heavy competition with Indiana, Ohio, Virginia, let alone the world. We really are. We had one member that moved 103 employees from northern Michigan down to Indiana during the shutdown because they couldn't meet their demands. So we've got a lot of work and a lot of opportunity. We're going to need a little help from the government if we can get it. The other opportunities would be the acceleration of automation and the acceleration of Industry 4.0. Those things are already underway. We want to be mindful of the impact on employees. If people are not gainfully employed, it'll be far more difficult for them to buy the goods that are being produced. So there's a balance to be had there, and I'm not sure exactly what the balance is, but I think it's obvious we will be looking closely as an industry at automation. The last thing I'm going to mention, and then I want to open to your questions, is the Future for Frontliners. That's a program that the governor just announced yesterday. It's a wonderful program for our manufacturing employees. The purpose is to address the employees that were frontliners during the crisis, and manufacturing employees were brought into that definition. It wasn't just the grocery store clerks and our first responders. The traditional folks, first responders is what you might think, but it picked up a lot of folks. But there's an underlying importance, in my opinion, and I mentioned it in a press conference yesterday with the governor, and that is, here's a great opportunity to help our employees upskill. And to do it, many of you may have programs that help your employees with their financial footing to get their education, to move forward in your company. This is money that was derived from the CARES Act, and the employees can apply for it. We're suggesting some flexibility on your part in terms of hours. You want to keep them on the job, but while they have the opportunity to take advantage of this, and it's a very small window to apply through December 31, maybe you can help somebody. You might have a person that's got a very good position, and they're trying to get a certificate that could help you and help them. But because they're juggling with financial demands, they might have, I'll give you a very specific example. Shape Corporation had an employee that they are just invested in, trying to help her move through an educational process to earn a better living, and she could handle the daycare that was thrust upon her because of COVID. Maybe a daycare center changed its hours, school wasn't in, and she could balance her work day, but she couldn't quite continue to do her own education because she was now responsible for educating her child at a heavier rate than when the child was going to school. And this program might allow some additional financial support. It may not change the whole picture for that particular employee or your employees, but it might allow them the financial flexibility to pursue other alternatives that can help them address other needs in their life, like childcare, so that they can get back to school and skill up. So I'm going to encourage you to take a look at Futures for Frontliners, get the word out to your employees, work with them. And the site that you can visit for that is michigan.gov/frontliners, one word, frontliners. So with that, I would be happy, and I thank you for listening. There was a lot to cover. I hope it was helpful, but I would like to be, at this point, I'd like to be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, John. Fascinating, but I think your message shows how, number one, how important manufacturing is to this state, but how other businesses, especially during this COVID, are intertwined. I mean, we've got to have that daycare. We've got to have a response to kids going back to school, and how do those parents, if they're not back, and going virtually, how do we provide that care so the folks can either go back to work or get trained? It's not an easy answer. So I don't know if we have any questions right now. If we do, participants, please chime in, and we'll try and get those to John. I'm waiting for your question. I guess here in Saginaw County, John, we have a real focus on not just clean energy, with consumers energy, with DTE, with companies like one of our sponsors, Hemlock Semiconductor. And I don't know if you have a feel for the future of that. The other direction we have going on, one of them would be the autonomous vehicle, or manufacturing going on with Nextier Corporation, and then medical device manufacturing. So we are quite diverse in this region as we approach manufacturing. So I don't know what you're locally, the future of all of those, maybe if you want to touch on that.
Sure. I don't have specific regional numbers for the state, not yet. I was trying to pull something together that was reliable, and what I could come up with, for the most part, was our state numbers. There's still a lot of variables that we haven't measured to get to reliable local numbers. On energy, my sense is from a legislative standpoint, I can't address production and availability and cost. The
Mhm.
legislature seems to be settled for the moment. You know, that's one of those issues that comes and goes. It becomes really quite a debate over our energy policy. I don't think we'll see much on that until well after the election, if not for a couple more years. It's a fairly fresh discussion from about 2.5 years ago. On automation or the mobility discussion, what I'm really encouraged by is so much discussion in the state, from the smallest to the largest. It's an area that we really should own. And I know that sounds colloquial and a cheerleader, but the fact is we have dozens upon dozens of companies that are working in that space. And there's been some changes in our state government, in the MEDC, to focus more on that area, and that is very promising. To have a mobility corridor announced, it certainly is in Southeast Michigan, because that's where our population is, and it offers the greatest opportunity for testing and expansion. But every one of the companies that might be working on it that are located in Southeast Michigan require a supply chain that comes from all over the state. So I think there is some promise in that as well.
Yeah, now we just got a question from someone about that, the autonomous vehicle corridor in Southeast Michigan, and if you know the opportunities are for manufacturers in this region to participate. So I think
Not yet.
that.
You know, they're starting to flesh that out, but we have pledged to work with them and inform the administration that we will be a bullhorn for their use to get the word out to our members as that process matures. It's not far enough along yet to announce anything. That'd be an area where I'd love the legislature to tailor some incentives to, if we can. Having it announced and staffed is wonderful, but if we can incentivize some folks to do more with it, we can assure those jobs could be in Saginaw or elsewhere in the state of Michigan.
Maybe that Good Jobs for Michigan package.
Yes, yes, it would be a good thing.
And for all you viewers, the Saginaw County Chamber is working with Michigan manufacturers and others for that Good Jobs package. We'd love to see that happen. Another question, one of our members called the MEDC to ask some detail on Frontline. Are there specific details on eligible employees you have that aren't on the website?
All I have, to be honest, is they have on their website, they should have what they've called, they had a name for it, but it's a champion toolkit. And it has some information, and what I can do, this might be a little different. And Veronica, I'll get this to you.
Okay.
This was provided to me just recently, but I'll get that to you. What it says simply is that all essential workers in Michigan without a college degree or high school equivalency who worked at the height of the COVID-19 crisis, specifically applicants must have worked at least half-time in 11 of 13 weeks from April 1 through June 30. So it's awfully broad, but when you get to the website, and as it was described to me by the Department of Leo, it really is going to be more the frontliners, but that includes manufacturers. So what I'm reading here is awfully broad, but it's a little more tailored than that in reality. I'm going to get this to you. There's no harm in forwarding it, but I'll have you forward it to participants.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. I don't see, do applicants have to complete a degree to receive the tuition support? Okay, how is the MMA engaging on the movement to reshore critical manufacturing? There is much focus on the supply chain vulnerabilities that were exposed by COVID, and it is a wonderful opportunity for Michigan to showcase itself as a place for manufacturers to invest. How can Michigan best position itself? Do applicants have to complete a degree to receive the tuition support?
So I'll start with that last part, Veronica. I don't know, but I will endeavor to find out. And when I send you this toolkit, I'll send that answer to you. I don't believe degree completion is required 100%, meaning if you had a life challenge,
Sure.
there's going to be some relief. But in other regards, there's an expectation that the employee will actually put the time in. But I'm going to get a specific answer on that and
Okay,
get that to you.
thank you.
For reshoring, and that goes along with the regional supply chains, there's a couple of levels that we're working at. The first is through the National Association of Manufacturers. What they're doing is trying to pursue a national policy that will help reshore and use federal resources to affect that. And then we're connecting directly with our counterparts there on how to bring that here to Michigan. My observation after 9 months on the job here is we have a very solid relationship with the NAM. They have plenty of states to take care of, but Michigan has been well provided for, and we're going to continue to work with them. What I've told them is give us a chance at bat as a state with a potential reshoring, and we'll take a swing at that baseball. Helps up, and so that's what we're working on with them. Here at the state level, it's trying to work on incentives. It's ill-defined at the present time, I'll be honest in that. Good jobs is clear, easy to understand, and works. We haven't defined yet, working with the administration and legislators, what does it mean to reshore to Michigan? And we have to get to that. Part of our hesitation, it's not a hesitation, we just have been putting out fires for the last 6 months, like we all have. And for the first time, I actually feel like we've got a bit of space to take a look and really give thought to this. So stay tuned, and we'll be getting the words out as we work on that.
Okay, well, and speaking of that, I have a question, and I think I know the answer, but I'll let you respond to that. In addition to the good jobs for Michigan, we would like to see an R&D credit, especially for the mobility industry, advanced automotive, and aerospace as a start. Is MMA on board to support an R&D credit?
We are indeed, absolutely.
Wonderful. Yeah, as our, is our chamber, the cold hard fact is we have to offer these incentives because states around us are eating our lunch. And if we want to provide these great and move manufacturing forward, we have to have incentives.
There's no question.
Okay, I have a question here. Your statement against racial injustice and racism earlier this year was strong and appropriate. Oh, I'm assuming that is to me. The chamber did come out with some very strong statements about our community. We have a very diverse community, and we love it. Where do manufacturers fit into this larger discussion? I'm going to let you talk, but Dow is a premier example of a manufacturer that is really integrating, diversity and inclusion. But please, John, go ahead.
We did make a statement. Our board addressed it at its June board meeting and felt committed to it. So our industry, manufacturing, our members are very committed. Some companies are devoting resources to it. Others don't have the resources to devote to it. So as an association, what we're going to be trying to do is work with, as we see programs developed, perhaps at larger employers that could be scaled to the smaller, we'll do like we did with all of those response plans, is put that into a toolkit that will be on our website. That's one of the things that we're going to do. We've also been talking to a couple of we have what we call associate members. These are HR firms, they might be accounting and legal firms, and we're trying to come up with a webinar that will talk about diversity and inclusion for members to learn in that regard. That's, I think, how we can be most helpful as an association. My observation is, and Veronica, you and I have been around for a long time because we started when we were 12 years old. But I think we both, and many of us on the phone, have heard lots of talk for many, many years. My sense is there is a societal change underway, and employers have a big role in taking hold of that and providing leadership. So you'll see some more from us in webinars, and you'll certainly see more from our members.
And as for us. So I think that wrapped up the questions. unless anybody has a last minute one, but we will wrap up. What I would like to do, first of all, is thank you, John, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Your schedule is crazy. You have been all over the state during this challenging time and meeting with your members, so we do appreciate that. We want to thank our sponsors once again. That's AT&T, Dow, Saginaw Valley State University, Hemlock Semiconductor Operations LLC, Consumers Energy, Great Lakes Bay Michigan Works, Health Alliance Plan, Next Tier, and Saginaw Future Inc. Before we go, I want to let you know that the Chamber will hold our virtual October Perk Breakfast on Thursday, October 1st, with our featured presenter, Rich Studley, President and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. And he will be discussing November ballot questions and kind of an oversight of Michigan elections. You can register online at our website, www.saginawchamber.org. And we hope you can join us. This is an important election. Obviously, they all are, but it's a presidential during very challenging times. And Michigan is a battleground state, so I think you'll find this informative. The Chamber will continue to communicate current information that impacts local business through our website, our At a Glance network, and through email updates. We want to thank you for participating in today's webinar and hope you've gained some new information and perspective on the importance of manufacturing to the future of our community. Please have a wonderful afternoon, and you know what? Take the rest of the day off. We are adjourned. Thank you.